Environment Director at Dwr Cymru. Tony, welcome.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Can we get to the thing?
Yep.
Well done.
Right, let's close that one, and
So me doing it down the bottom.
that's it.
And click the mouse to move.
That's it.
Oh, we're in summary mode.
To the end.
Let's go to the first slide, shall we?
Showing someone. That's right. Rusty wanted to look through it.
Okay, thanks very much. It's slightly bizarre, actually. Last time I was standing on the stage, I was graduating. So probably a little bit more nervous than I was then, actually. I don't remember being very nervous in my graduation. Something to do the night before. So I'm just going to give you a really simple presentation today. I'm going to talk about some of our strategic intent as a business. Some of you will know, hopefully my customers will know, we're a non-for-profit organisation, so we have a unique model in terms of the water industry. We don't strip out something between 70 and 100 million pounds of cash every year and give it to our shareholders. All of the money that we get from our customers, we plough back into providing improvements to the environment and obviously supporting our drinking water endeavours. So I'm going to talk about our environmental outcomes within the context of that unique model. What really ecosystem services mean to Dwr Cymru Welsh Water, which is DCWW. And then I'm going to spend most of the time talking about some practical examples, as Emir was alluding to earlier. So essentially, we've been thinking for some time, actually, about how we want to make a difference in the environment. And within the strategic documentation that we all put out there, and we've seen lots of other documents from Natural England to LRW and so on, we too have strategy documents that we put on our website that describe the strategic intent of the business. And if you look at the key phrases, really, for protecting the environment and climate change, that's what it says. So in essence, we're here to provide a safe and sustainable environment, one which we're proud to hand to our children at the end of the day. And in climate change terms, our focus is very much on resilience, particularly in terms of flooding, and also on driving our carbon footprint down. Not just because it's the right thing to do for customers and climate change, but also because we drive our carbon footprint down through energy production. We gratefully receive all of the products that you give us through toilets and so forth, and we turn that into energy at about 80% of our sites. So it makes very good business sense for us, actually, to take what you kindly donate and turn it into methane and then electricity. So we have goals within the strategy documents, and the goal that hinges around the environment is that one. And that applies to aquatic biodiversity. As we've heard, we're involved in a number of projects that are looking at re-wetting uplands, whatever it happens to be, looking at the passage of salmonid fish in important designated rivers and so forth. It could apply to our work with colleagues on SSIs in uplands. As I said, it applies to some of the lowland rivers, certainly the rivers where we put effluent into the rivers and or taking water out for the production of drinking water. But it also applies to the protection of public health. One of the reasons that we treat sewage, and we certainly disinfect it on the coast, is because the coast is one of the major areas where we recreate, and it's very, very important to run all of our assets in a way so that the public health, who are our customers and tourists who are recreating on the coast, are adequately protected, essentially. So within that we have plans, and our plans pertain really around maximising the value that we seek from every penny that our customers give us, which is why when we look at ecosystem services, we look at it in a very positive way. We see it as a tool, if you like, to help us provide value to our customers in the longer term. And that links back to the ownership model. Unlike some of the other companies who do tend to take much shorter term investment decisions than us, my board look at paybacks way outside the 5-year regulatory cycle that we work within. So we're quite happy to look at payback periods of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, which is pretty unique in the water industry. We also have an improved readiness for climate change. Our assets get flooded out just like lots of other people's assets do. And we also provide with our sewerage systems, our combined sewerage systems, conduits which gather large amounts of rainfall in urban areas anyway, and we then have to treat all of that water. So I'll talk about in a minute what we're doing to separate out the rainfall so that we don't have to put it through our treatment plants, which just ever increases our carbon footprint effectively. But also in doing that, we can regreen the urban environment and work in a very sensitive way to making it just a nicer, better place to live. And that means we have to deal with droughts as well as floods in terms of climate change, because it will probably bring both to Wales. And again, we have to look at the coast and protecting public health as well as what's going on inland. And that really is based around evidence. And that's one of the big changes that we're going to start from about 2015 onwards in my company. In the past, we have been too dependent, frankly, on our regulators and others to provide us with evidence to manage our processes and design our infrastructure. So we have put in the largest program of science and investigations into our business plan for 2015 to 2021 in the history of my business. We're going to go out and we're going to work in partnership with hopefully colleagues here at Bangor and elsewhere and start to build an evidence base together with evidence gathered, of course, by NRW and colleagues in government. And we will use that to design and future-proof our systems much, much better than we have done in the past, where we have relied on many proprietary design approaches that have been around in my industry, certainly since the 1970s. We haven't really looked very creatively at how we can use that evidence together with an ecosystems approach to take a much softer and more sympathetic approach to actually designing our infrastructure. Most of our infrastructure, if you've ever seen it, is made of concrete. It's very, very expensive to put up. And we do think that the ecosystems approach offers a much more cost-effective and also much more value-laden way of actually delivering the services that my company delivers to my customers, who are incidentally also my shareholders. So they have a vested interest for all sorts of reasons about getting it right. And that has to be done, as Emir mentioned, in an aligned regulatory environment. We have to work in partnership with our regulators, with our customers, with local communities, with academia, with a whole raft of people actually, to make it work. We have been doing some trials in catchments this year, which I'll describe in a minute, but the one major piece of learning is you have to do it in partnership. This is not something that a water company can come or a government can come and simply impose on people. It will not work. And one of the main reasons it won't work is because all of these systems need maintaining. They have to be looked after. They're not the sort of concrete structures which we can build, put underground and walk away from. They're things where the local community, farmers, landowners, fishermen, whoever happens to be involved, they have to own part of the solution or it simply will not be sustainable. Okay, so turning to climate change quickly, that's our goal, which I mentioned earlier, and that's really going to be underpinned by better science. We built our own laboratory past couple of years. It used to be outsourced to England, it's now in Wales. It also, in terms of climate change, in terms of the way we manage our water resources, in terms of the way we deal with recreational use on some of our reservoirs and so forth. Again, evidence gathering has to absolutely underpin our thinking in terms of climate change resilience. We have to move to much, much better evidence-based decision-making in my business, as well as supporting Welsh Government in its policy making, of course. Then we have to start to move properly into research. We don't do very much research as a business. Again, we've relied on other water companies and on other parties to do research, and we've kind of borrowed the results. We now need to move much, much stronger into the research arena. That happens to be some research we're sponsoring at Bath University to do with whether we can use algae as a treatment process for final polishing of sewage effluents. We'll also be working at a catchment scale, so we've got catchment investigation studies post-2015, looking at the whole of the aquatic water cycle in catchments, in selected catchments in Wales. And I'll talk a bit more about our sustainable urban drainage work. What we call Rainscape is the brand that we use, where we'll be turning the urban environment and greening it. So we have also set a series of measures of success, which we are going to be judged by. In fact, reward in the business is linked to these as well, which is quite interesting. So the fabric of the business is financially incentivized, if you like, to deliver. It's not just words that we're putting in documents. We're judged by our successes or our failures. And that again applies to affordable and sustainable water resources. It applies to, this is a typical street, and that's what it would look like afterwards. So once we've come into a community and we've started to re-green the community to take the surface water out of the sewers, we're hoping that house prices and general well-being and so forth be a much nicer place to live in the urban communities of Wales. Again, science argument. Science has to underpin what we are doing. We have to be evidence-led. The introduction of new technology, that's, believe it or not, that's Cardiff Sewage Works. That's where, I don't know, almost 800,000 population equivalent of sewage and industrial waste comes, and that's the plant that turns it into energy for us. Fuels about 50% of the requirements of the sewage works at the moment. We're hoping that a co-digestion plant for food waste will be built alongside it, and then the plant will be completely self-sustaining in terms of its energy. Photovoltaics, we've been putting photovoltaics up at many of our sites, which you'll see if you drive around the countryside. Not always a popular thing to do. And there's another algal piece of research that we need to get into. We also need to work to educate our customers, whether it's to use less water, to use water wisely, not to flush things down the toilet that shouldn't be put into the toilet. Be amazed what we find in our sewers. So we pause. We do have to work with our customers as well about educating them, and they have to be part of the solution. So we have to involve our customers in all of the ecosystems work that we'll do. Okay, so turning to what is natural resources management. Well, fortunately, Matthew didn't put up any slides because I actually nicked his. This came from a Welsh Government conference that was about 2 weeks ago, and a colleague of mine came in and knew I was preparing my slides for today and showed me these. And as far as I'm concerned, they're pretty much spot on what we believe in terms of what natural resource management is about. And that's quite fortuitous, actually, because we are going to have to work very, very closely with Welsh Government, and if we had a completely different view on what natural resource management was about, it'd be not a great start, really. And in terms of how we're going to put it into practice, well, we're going to certainly have to identify the opportunities, want to work out where the low-hanging fruit is, which catchments to be working in first. We have to involve customers and communities, as we've all mentioned. That's absolutely critical to the success of those projects. And then we're going to have to make better decisions on behalf of our customers with the evidence that we are going to be gathering, the science that we're going to be doing, and the research that we need to sponsor. And then all of that will be framed within the outcomes, as I've mentioned, so we can measure our success against the various outcomes that we've said we will deliver for our customers. And our overall aims, in terms is obviously supporting and playing our role, supporting Welsh Government as needed, really, to ensure that Wales has an increasingly resilient and diverse ecosystems, achieve better management of our natural resources, and ensure that we make the most of the opportunities that we have. And in so doing, we will provide a safe and sustainable environment, one which we're proud to hand to our children. Okay, so in terms of how we're going to achieve it, well, as I said, we need to play our role. That doesn't mean doing everything. It just means doing what we as a responsible water company should do within the ecosystems debate. We certainly need to help Welsh Government to improve the regulatory system. One of the really interesting things about the water industry is that the system we work under was actually designed in the 1980s, a bit like some of the engineering designs we use. And as Matthew mentioned, I'm not sure it's fit for purpose anymore. When I was a policy director in government in DEFRA, I asked colleagues why the water industry was structured in the way it was. And they said it was deliberately structured like that to have a creative tension between both each of the regulators and the sector and NGOs. And I found that quite worrying, really, because as we move from the 1980s to 2020, we can't deliver ecosystem services with a creative tension between all of the relevant parties. So one of the things that I think we do need to look at long and hard is the structures that we have in law that guide the water industry and its regulators. Moving on, we need to educate our customers, as I said before. They have to be part of the solution. They have to feel part of the solution. This is not something that we want to do to our customers. It's something that we want to do with our customers. And then lastly, delivering our investment proposals for the next 6 years, obviously in a very environmentally sensitive and intelligent way. So let's look at some of the examples. This is one that Emir put up earlier. It's really important for us, all of these types of land management proposals, because they both benefit water quantity in terms of making water available in a dry year and so on, but they also help water quality. And in both of those, my customers get a cash benefit effectively, because we either don't need to build other assets to store water and distribute water and so on and so forth, or we can effectively provide it to the required standards with lower levels of treatment. And that normally, in fact, it almost exclusively means less electricity use, less cost, and we pass that benefit straight back to our customers. We've also got work up in Snowdonia, where we're looking again at blocking what we call grips, drainage blocking essentially, which is interesting. That was all put in with DEFRA funds in the 1960s and 70s, so we're sort of reversing some historic decisions. But it's definitely the right thing to do. It makes a huge amount of sense for us. We get water quality improvements, less dissolved organic carbon normally in the raw water, and also the water drains much slower, so that we have a much more robust water resource position in the area. So a real win-win for us. Not to mention all the benefits to breeding birds and biodiversity and tourism, and so the list goes on. So I just mentioned Rainscape. Emir was talking about the work we're doing in Llanelli and also the work we're doing in Cardiff. We've taken a very long-term view to how we want to manage the urban drainage environment. For the last 25 years, most water companies have essentially been combining sewerage systems, taking rainfall, put it into the sewerage systems. That was the cheapest thing to do. And to be honest, from a very short-termist point of view, if I was only looking at making profits for shareholders, in some areas that's still probably the best thing to do. But when you factor climate change in, and you factor the other benefits that come out of a more ecosystem services approach to urban drainage, it's most definitely the wrong thing to do. There are so many other benefits that come to us as a business and to society of simple things just by regreening the environment and taking the surface water out. Although it might not have a payback that is quite as favourable as some of the other more concrete solutions, when you add the value in associated with the other aspects of our Rainscape projects, it is definitely the right thing to do for our customers. So we've got a project started in Llanelli, which is jointly led between ourselves and Carmarthen County Council, NRW obviously involved too. And we're looking there to, bit by bit, subcatchment by subcatchment, take rainwater out of the combined sewerage system, put it directly into streams, and in some cases we're having to put the streams back into the urban environment in its own right because they were taken out many years ago. And all of that will bring all sorts of benefits. Now for the engineers in the room, I'm not sure there are that many engineers in this room, this is a sort of diagram that we use, and have I got a laser pointer? Have a look. Oh yes. These sorts of areas, we can create greened areas in parts that will preferentially flood from the roads and take a few hours to drain down. But all of that water effectively either doesn't come into the sewerage system or it's delayed to coming into the sewerage system so that the sewerage system doesn't overflow and then pollute the local environment and local watercourses. And at a more local level, this is in Caldecott, another project, a lot of these projects are at a street level, which means we have to go and knock on all the doors of the customers in that street, and we have to talk to them about what we are doing in their street. Because in some cases, we're going to take up car parking spaces, for instance. So not all of what we do is hugely popular. But once we've explained it to them and about the benefits, and particularly about the flooding risk reductions to their properties often, they're normally very, very supportive. In this particular one, we use an existing playing field effectively to create a mini floodplain, if you like, which will flood for a few hours and then it will drain down. And that's much, much better, obviously, than causing flooding in people's homes. I don't know if you've ever seen a home that's been flooded with sewage, but it's about the most awful thing that could happen to your home, short of it burning to the ground, I would say. In terms of what it does to the value of the property and so on and so forth, it is a very seriously awful thing to do to someone's home. Now, unfortunately, it only happens to 100 or so properties in Wales every year, but that's 100 or so properties too many. And this is one of the initiatives that will be rolling out across Wales to gradually reduce the number of properties that are at risk. Okay, so moving swiftly onwards, just some before and after examples, before on the left, after on the right. You might think it's quite a subtle change, but if you did that in a lot of streets, boy, does it add up in terms of the overall amount of water that you are not getting into your sewage systems, these little planters around tree bases and so on. And finally, a water source management plan. This is a process which is led by NRW and is about as near to ecosystem services as we get. All of these processes, with a little bit of a nudge, could actually be almost exemplar projects for ecosystem services. This one is very close because we actually do take the carbon and societal impact costs into account of the engineering solutions that we look at. And we could turn in Wales into a proper full-blown ecosystems approach if we wanted to. It's a 5-yearly cycle. We're just about to publish our final plan, so we've got plenty of time to redesign the guidance that's issued by government and make it exemplar. And I look forward to working with Welsh Government and NRW on that. So in summary, our unique ownership model puts us in an enormously strong position around ecosystem services. It's very, very well suited to the whole catchment-based approach. We can take longer-term decisions on behalf of our customers because we don't have the sort of pressures that people like Thames Water have from shareholders. We're already well on the way to working in an ecosystems way. We've got some trial projects, as I've described, in all sorts of ways. Our investment programs between 2015 and 2021 are absolutely focused on supporting government in this endeavour. But it really is critical, and this is the message I would leave you with, that absolutely everybody has to play their part. This is not something that the water company and NRW can deliver on our own. We have to have the support of the local authorities. We have to have the support of the local communities, of farmers, of landowners, of the fishing groups, of the people that fish at sea. Everyone has to get involved and play their part if it is to be successful. If any one of those groups doesn't get properly involved, it makes it very, very difficult, and it will slow the whole process down and probably increase its costs. So it's something which we as a community in Wales can get behind and drive and make a huge success for us and my business and my customers. Thank you very much.